The next thing I want to show you is really how to properly sharpen your hoe, because a sharp hoe takes a lot less effort to get through the soil than a dull hoe. And the same thing goes for any digging tool. But before we start that, you really need to invest in a good file. This is a Nicholson file. It's actually called a handy file. It's got two different kinds of cuttings on it. On one side it's kind of a checkerboard, and that is more aggressive. It cuts more metal off. And then we have it just where it's not checkerboard, and that's kind of the finished side of the file. The thing about files is, do not buy a cheap file. I can buy some files that are, you know, they're nice and big. They got some fancy plastic handle on them. They cost like $6, and this file costs about $20. But this file will last you years and years and years. And those cheaper files are not actually sharp, and it's very difficult to sharpen tools with a dull file. So just a word of caution there. Okay, so starting on our cleaning up, we talked about that a little bit, but we want to get this dirt off of here before we start to sharpen, because we don't want all that dirt getting into our file. So we're going to kind of do some pre-scraping. This side looks pretty good, so then we'll just take our rag and kind of wipe that off, similar to what we did on the cleanup in general. Then what we're going to do, if you had a bench vise, that would be wonderful, but we don't. So we can use the tailgate of our truck, works pretty good. If you've got a curb and you don't have a problem with bending way down, that's something else you can lean it on. You put your leg on this and kind of wrap it around to put a little bit of weight on this to hold it still. And then our first cuts with the file are perpendicular to the blade that we're going to sharpen. So we're going along here, and what we're doing is we're removing all the little nicks and cuts in this blade before we start to sharpen it. The other thing that we do is we change directions, and we count the number of strokes that we're making. That way this blade ends up staying level. And it's kind of like if you always file from one side, eventually one side is real high and one side is real low, because you have different force that you're applying. Okay, so we got that done. Then the next thing to do is there's an angle on this blade that's actually been cut in it at the factory. And so we'd like to mimic that angle as much as we can. And then we just start making nice cuts across there like that. Now, a lot of people say it's got to be a certain angle. Don't get hung up in all that, because you know, if you want a professional hoe sharpener to sharpen your hoe, that's fine, but we're not going to do it. We're just going to make sure we got some angle to it. Then we're going to turn it around, and we're going to now, the other thing that us guys like to do is we like to go into the shed, and we've got a bench grinder, but we don't really do that with hand tools like this, because every time you get a little bit too hot on that grinder, you get too aggressive, you'll see a little, the steel will go from this bright silver to kind of a blue, and that means you just burnt that little bit of metal, and it's not going to hold an edge in that one spot. So that's why I would really prefer using a file, because you're not going to do that with a file. So now I've done some pretty serious cutting on that with this checkerboard side. Then I'm going to finish up with my smoother side, and then we'll be done. So that's 4, 5, and then we're going to roll it over, and we're going to do another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So basically we've got this hoe sharpened, and then since we didn't put any, we could put a little bit of oil on it. And this handle hasn't been oiled for a long time, so we're gonna oil that. And it's ready to be stored in our shed, or if you're like me, I carry my tools in the back of my truck because, you know, I'm a vegetable guy, so I always need a hoe or I always need a shovel. So that's it on tool care. If you do that, your tools will last a long time. I've got that shovel that we've been using this morning. That shovel's probably 20 years old. Still a good shovel. So that's it, and we'll catch you next time.